I suppose the first question, Rob, is what are the skill sets required by a press photographer?
You need to be able to work with people. You need to be able to have an instinct of what's going on in front of you almost immediately, because you can turn up somewhere and the scenario is so different to what you expected. So you need to be able to make judgment calls when you're there, and the ability to respond to anything very quickly. As you get more into it and the more of your career develops, you become wiser as well. So you learn an even better way to deal with a situation.
Time plays a big element in your type of work, I would imagine, because you can be sent from assignment to assignment during a working day, I guess, can't you?
Yeah, the time is really crucial. You need to be able to manage it well and not panic, because there's not often much time. You can find yourself having an hour on a job, and then suddenly that decreases to half an hour because you've got a call to go somewhere else, but you still need to produce the stuff that you was asked to do when you were sent out. So that would include video and stills. Right. And you still need to do it to a standard that's expected of you. And all photographers, we know the standard, but we like to produce better. We like to do more. No one's ever happy with what they've done. Mm-hmm. I'm forever saying to someone, just a couple more, just a few more. And they don't know why I'm saying that, but I can see through the viewfinder that perhaps maybe if I just moved an inch that way, I might just get something else that I haven't seen, or so. And you can spend 4 hours doing that, but you've got to be very conscious of time when you're working, especially when you've got to run a briefs as well, because because I'm working for someone else, there's a professional aspect to it, and you don't want to turn up late. Punctuality is still very important. You've arranged a time with someone to be there, you've got to be there. Mm-hmm. So you need to, it's vital, really.
How about filing stuff then? How does that happen? Do you do it on the fly as you're going?
Yes, we judge it really on a priority. So if it's something that's breaking news, it's wanted immediately. If something really important is happening. And with the internet as well and social media, it's important to get images back quickly and react to things very quickly. So we have various ways of sending pictures back, and we can go, we strip right back to our phones. We can use pictures from our phones, which is kind of it's taken a little bit of getting used to working your phone, because as a photographer, we're purists with photography. We like to use a nice big camera and things like that. But you forget that your phone is quite good these days, and you can do some good stuff with it. And it's a brilliant way of being able to get an image back to a destination quickly, and then having someone write a story around it, whatever that story is.
Do you go out with journalists at all, or is that part of the deal as well?
Sometimes, yeah. We still go with journalists. Journalists have worked really hard, and they've produced stuff too. And equally, they've got phones too. There's limitations we can do with a mobile phone. They still do pictures, but if you want to do a long lens shot, you're never gonna. At the moment, there's nothing there where you can get a 200mm quality picture with a mobile phone, or 400mm. So you won't be to see them at sports events or anything like that. But in terms of emergencies or anything that's right on their doorstep, they can react to it and get that picture too. So yeah, they go out as well as multitasking. I think it is multimedia journalists. Multimedia journalist,
so not a photographer, but a multimedia journalist.
Yes, and we're all that really, because although my skill is photography. I video now, and I do interviews as well, which is when I first started in my training, interviewing wasn't really top of the agenda. It was more about getting the captions right and names spelled correctly, which is still very important now, but we can take that further now, because we can talk to people and record conversations with people on video, and like a very short interview and things,
Right. Do you take stills from your video at all, or does that happen?
It does, yeah. It does happen sometimes. Mainly if it's off the phone. Really, you should be able to take a still off your camera and take a still picture off your camera. But if they needed to for any reason, you can take a still off the video because the quality of the video is very good. It is done quite regularly. I mean, you see newspapers and websites doing it all the time.
How difficult was it to make that kind of jump from just using a still camera but being having to multitask in this way? How difficult did you find that?
It was a new challenge when we started doing it, which was a few years ago now. But it was exciting because another visual aspect of what we do. At the end of the day, we're visual people. So transferring that from photography seemed like just another way of expressing yourself too. So video is very interesting and fun to do actually.
Yeah. Do you prefer video to stills?
I would say they both offer different things. Right. I enjoy doing them both for different reasons, I think.
So where did your career start, Rob?
It started in Essex, at the Essex Chronicle, which is a weekly paper. But I did start learning about photography through education. So my days in college and university, where I started off doing sort of graphic design and things like that, but then sort of specialised into photography. I think the reason I really got into photography was when my landlady, who I was staying with in Norwich, when I was at Norwich School of Art and Design, she said to me, you've got a good eye for composition. So I thought, well, let's see where that takes me. And then I started getting into photography a lot more, and also it was a quick way of producing an image as well. And I used to like doing painting and things like that, but I'd sometimes get a little bit impatient, and I wanted a quick medium to produce an image, and photography was that for me. Even to the point where we'd started doing studio work at college, we would, I'd get frustrated with having to move the light to the left a little bit more, to the right, and then I'd lose my train of thought and wonder what I was doing, and then you'd find you have to reset again because things were getting complicated and stuff like that. So started looking into press photography, and I knew that was a really kind of fast way of producing work and interesting work too. And also because of deadlines and that, and the challenges that threw sounded quite interesting to me. And I started to look at. I used to go to the library quite a lot at my college in Thurrock, which is where I started, which is where I did my sort of BTEC, and looked at Andy Leibovich and people like that. And there was a fantastic book on a picture editor and photographer called Eamon McCabe, who basically is a massive inspiration to me. He's probably the one that really got me involved with press photography, because I was looking at his images, and this is all on film, of course, and he was a multi-award-winning photographer. I think he worked for The Guardian and things like that, and a lot of his sports stuff was just phenomenal. And the way he would see a shape in what was in front of him and use the way he composed stuff, was just so fascinating, and I found that inspiring. So with Eamon McCabe in mind, and looking at Annie Leibovich, who was very much more of a studio photographer with her portraits and that, what she was doing was really interesting too. I mean, she's a household name really, but when you look at the work and the personalities she photographed, she must have had some control of those people, and to get precisely what she wanted with the big characters that she was working with, that takes some doing. It can be quite intimidating as a photographer if you're faced with someone who is a household name and very famous and that, and you've got to try and control them to get what you want,
Yes. And what sort of stuff were you working on in your first newspaper job?
It was a trainee, and I was working at the Essex Chronicle, which was from Billericay, so it's my home patch. I'm native to the area, so I know it very well. And we'd be doing, it's because it's a weekly, it was slower pace, and we're working on film. And I remember there's like a fridge full of Fuji film, and you could have an endless supply of it. It would never run out of stock. And we were working, I think we had Nikon cameras then. I can't remember exactly what it was now. 2 bodies and a beige bag, I remember. And we used to go out and just do things like, there was a lot of check presentations and stuff like that, especially as a trainee. It's the way of learning about the trade. And then you always used to start thinking, well, how can I compose this check presentation different to anything else that's been done? And you'd be working at it, and you'd try and get you'd roll the check up, or you'd turn it upside down, or you'd look at various ways of presenting it.
Yeah.
and you would do it and you'd be really pleased with it. And then you'd think that was the only picture of that particular angle done in the world, and then perhaps a few months later you see that it'd been done before or something like that. But that's where you start trying to push the boundaries a little bit and exploring what you can do with what's in front of you, and sort of break away from what's expected, so that was a really good starting point. And then we'd just cover things like local dignitaries and fetes and stuff, and some of the local sports events like Billericay Town Football Club or Chelmsford City or Essex County Cricket. It was good stuff. It's broad. It was all on film, and obviously there was deadlines to meet, and we was involved with processing the films and things like that, which was all done in a big colour film processing. I think it was a Fuji thing. I can't remember what it was now, but it was a massive. It was like a fridge freezer on its side, and you put the film in one end, and then it'll come out there and all processed. And you'd scan the negs in and select the ones you wanted. Yeah. So it was kind of, it was going to that point where you had the old way of working with film, scanning the negs in, and they're becoming digital images. Yeah. So that's where I came in at the business. Really.
Beginning of digital, really.
Really, yeah.
So, 2 megapixel cameras and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly that, and I'm proud of that, really, because I feel like I'm of a generation of photographers that have enjoyed film, but also know digital now. Which is, if you're coming into it new, it can be quite daunting, because it's like like it says megapixels and we want a JPEG or RAW or
all the menus. Yeah.
Exactly, there's so much in front of you, and you can be a little bit confusing. But to have worked with film, especially for quite a long period of time, from when I was at Thurrock College and taking it into my career, I feel like I've learned something different and carried that with me in my work. And to be able to trust your instinct on what you've got on the film, because there's no way you could have ever checked until you got a print. My grey card used to be off of grass. It was green. Apparently, I was told that that's the closest to neutral grey you get. So I used to take it off a field. If there's a green field next to me, there's grass everywhere, so you could take it off a leaf or something like that. So I knew my exposures were kind of close, and by the time I got it back to the office, I could use a bit of Photoshop just to dabble if I needed to. It was never accurate, but that's how we used to work. I think I did have a grey card in my bag, but I don't think I ever used it.
Well, what did you? I mean, obviously there were, as you were a trainee, but there were people above you. What sort of kind of information did you glean from those guys? Did they put you in good stead for the next step in your career?
They did, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of some example really, but. Yeah, they were very, very good photographers, a lot of experience, and they would help you sort of deal with situations and how to approach certain scenarios and things like that. So they would have words of wisdom for you as a trainee, which would often trickle down probably from people that taught them. So yeah, that was very useful. It was very interesting talking to them. And then, because I was a trainee, part of my training involved going to Sheffield with, I'm not sure who, Paul Delmar, who's a press photographer, and he was, when it comes to doing your NCE and NCTJ, which is a specialist qualification for photojournalism, he was the teacher for it and the head of it and head of the course, and a lot of photographers had passed through him and gone on to greater things. And going there and doing that course was really important. So it was a crash course. It was, because I was on the job training, we would go to Sheffield perhaps 3 months over a 2-year period. So it actually would be 3 months within that 2 years, and then we would do a on-site part of the course, block of the course, which would be a lot of theory and a lot of law and stuff like that. So we'd be picking up law, like I said, which is crucial to a press photographer. Yes. Knowing where you stand in situations and what you can and can't do, which was vital.
And do you think, jumping in on that one, do you think that between when you started as a photographer and where we are today, do you think it's become more difficult in the sense that the law is, and where you can and can't shoot, and is that an issue for you these days? Or does your press card take you where you need to go?
The press card is useful. It's really useful because it shows you're a professional. Okay, that's why I carry mine with me all the time. And it's not a key to get anywhere. It's a way of showing that you are a professional, what you do, and it develops a bit of trust between you and whoever's, whoever, if it's a police officer or something like that, and that's fantastic. But equally, I know what I should and shouldn't be doing as a photographer.
Yes.
I know what I can and can't photograph and where I can and can't go. Which obviously is very important as a press photographer, because you need to be able to question things, but question things with knowledge.
Yes. The one thing I found, I've covered a few demos in Cardiff, and when things have been flying through the air and stuff, I find those very invigorating in a strange way, and I know it sounds trite and very cheesy to say, but the camera is kind of isolates me from things.
Yes.
And I can do things with that camera in front of my face that I wouldn't dare do otherwise.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's funny when you put the camera up to your face. So much happens. It's like you said. There's like you represent something. It's like holding up some kind of license to do something. It tells people who you are too. It's like an identity. But also, when you look through that viewfinder, you can sometimes lose yourself in it, and it's kind of therapeutic. If you had for example, you've had a rough morning and you're taking some pictures, and for 10 minutes it's quite intense. You're taking the photographs. You just seem to forget about everything around you, and in that viewfinder is your world all of a sudden, and that's what you're focused on. Pardon the pun, but you know what I mean. It's just a way of, it's a great distraction sometimes. And you can leave it after 10 minutes thinking, what was I worried about just then? What was that about? And you would have forgotten about it. It's that viewfinder can be sort of a nice rest sometimes from the outside world.
Well, let's jump to what brought you to Wales. Essex.
I don't think it was really related to photography. It was probably because I was working after the Essex Chronicle, I'd started working in London, and I'd sort of got into the dark world. I'd say dark world, it's a profession, but paparazzi.
Right, okay.
Because for me, it was quite literally it was a dark world, because you'd be working outside in nightclubs at night,
Yeah.
And I found it quite an interesting sort of community, because obviously people worked in paparazzi and that type of work for a long time and built up contacts and stuff like that. Now I struggled with that. I didn't know how they got the contacts, and I'm going to take us through time, being there persistent all the time and doing that job all the time. But for me, going up to London at 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night sometimes, just didn't appeal, and then staying there till 3 a.m. and having to file, with the prospect of perhaps nothing making anything, because the paparazzi side of things was more of a way of me sort of exploring another part of photography. It's a different skill.
Yes.
It is a different skill.
Did you need sharp elbows then?
Sometimes, I'd got caught up in a couple of situations which surprised me at times. You'd be on the other side of the tape and the barriers when the celebrities were coming through, and sometimes there'd be, some would be quite, worse for wear, a bit drunk perhaps, and may not take kindly to having their photograph taken, despite there being hundreds of photographers that may just pick someone out. I was picked up once or twice and have a go at you, but again, that's part of the learning curve of being a photographer. Develops your thick skin, and so I would say that was a very steep learning curve. Really would.
Is there any particular moment that stands out?
There are a few, but I don't want to name any names. Actually, I'm trying to be cautious. You can see I'm fudging around it a little bit.
Yeah.
But because I don't want to upset anybody, and I'll just keep those stories for the dinner table, I think.
So, Wales.
So we came to Wales mainly because after working in London, we just knew that I wasn't going to be able to afford a home and start a family if that's what I wanted to do, and I wanted a career too. So my wife is Welsh, and she was working in the media. She worked for the papers at the time, and we both had a hard conversation about what we're going to do next. So we felt we'd come this way. I started work in Bristol first, but I was living in Wales, so I found a job at the Western Daily Press and the Bristol Evening Post as a sort of deputy picture editor, really, or Western Daily Press picture editor, I think it was. So I was on a desk all of a sudden and not taking pictures anymore, which as a photographer, being a picture editor is the natural step up. But ironically, you don't get the opportunity to take pictures anymore. So you're editing other people's pictures, which can be frustrating because if you're a photographer, it's kind of in the blood. I find that you get itchy fingers and you want to go out and take pictures. So every now and again, I try and persuade the editor that I'd go and do that job, and if it was on foot, I'd run out and go do it myself, because you feel you just have to produce something. So after a year there, I moved over to the Western Mail, where the job there was very unique because it did involve picture editing, but you was out taking photos. So that was brilliant. You had the best of both worlds there, and that was really good. So I've been there really ever since, where the paper's evolved and developed into something different. It still is evolving, where we've gone from print to digital. So it's been fantastic really, the challenges that have come with it, but also the development of myself personally and new skills and things like that. Especially video. If you were looking back at your portfolio of your work as a press photographer, what moments stand out for you as a press photographer that you're really proud of? My portfolio, okay. I was really chuffed to have won the Photographer of the Year, which was really surprising. There's a lot of talented people out there, and I saw us up against, and they were brilliant photographers. So to have won that was a big shock, and that was one with the Rodri Morgan picture, and a picture of the Mac Loop. The Mac Loop where they've got the jet planes going past, and the other picture was of Michael Sheen. And actually, that picture of Michael Sheen is quite poignant in many respects, because he's kind of engaging with you, but he's kind of not engaging with you as well. But there's a kind of solace. There's a lot of thinking going on there somehow. That's interesting you should say that, because he was there as ambassador for UNICEF. So it's a different hat he's got on there. It's just a very serious thing. And we didn't have much time as well, so you can see that probably we only had about 5 minutes. So what you're talking about in regards to the connection, and that kind of seems like he's not settled in his chair. That's probably right, because he didn't have much time and there's a lot going on, and he's been interviewed by press. So between setting up a light, getting him to sit down and look at the camera, I had about 10 frames. The light, you just need to know where to put the light to sort of to speed things along a little. But it was right. It's interesting that you saw that in the photo. And the Mac Loop one is. Was it an assignment, or was that? No, that was. That I broke away from my family for half a day whilst we were on holiday. So, and I knew that this place existed. I knew that the planes flew past on a fairly regular basis. And you can say hello to the pilot. That's right. Literally, I've seen these pictures before where the photographers are looking down on them and that. Yeah. And I wanted to see and hear the planes as well as taking the pictures of them. So I didn't know what to expect or what to see. But when you saw the first one come past, you knew this was quite special, actually. This was like... I know people will get fed up with it around the area because they're low flying, and there's people that probably live underneath the planes. But personally, when I saw the planes go through and that, the sound of them and the roar of them, if you don't experience it that often, is quite incredible. It is, yeah. So the second time I think they came round, there was a couple of big fighter jets that come past, 2 of them, and I had a 300mm lens. There was photographers there on the hillside that had bigger lenses than me, and they were in different positions. I couldn't quite see what they had. So as the planes come closer, I just snapped away, and luckily I got like the vortex and the wings and things like that, which was I think makes the difference in that picture, because had that not been there, it would have been quite a flat image.
Yeah.
So it's just a little thing that I managed to luckily get, you know. So that was good, and that was done off my own back, really.
Right.
But it's part of exploring photography. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You went through uni and stuff, went through a lot of education. Did you find that you learnt more working than you did or was the education a good base for you to carry on?
Yes, the education I felt was important. You need to sort of learn how to process film and print on print pictures, and I think that has given me a really good foundation to where I am now. You know, an understanding of how light works, you know, how photography works. It's right down to the fundamentals and the chemistry of it. I mean, you could ask me questions about it now. I probably forgot a lot about it, but instinctively I know, you know, where I've come from and you know how to take a picture.
We go back to where you started at Ffoton. You went into a local newspaper, a weekly newspaper, as a junior. Does that system still work now, or do people come in from different directions, or are they used, or are people picked up as freelancers because their work appears to be good? Are they sending? Do you get photographers sending in work and saying, "I want to work for you"?
Yeah, it's. I mean, working in newspapers now is, you know, there's still work there, there's still jobs there, and you know, you see them advertised still. They're hard to come by, but I think photographers now create probably a living by working for themselves a lot more.
Young people wanting to get into the business of photojournalism maybe would apply to a big newspaper and not get anywhere. But there's always the opportunity to work on their own. Would you sort of agree with that sort of way of looking at things?
Working at grassroots level is really important. You know, you're proactive, you're in amongst the community, and you're honing your skills. You know, you're learning your trade. So if you're keen to get into journalism, then that's an asset. I think, you know, it's a good place to start. And then still, if you want to get into it and you want to get a job, keep applying for those jobs, because that's only going to look good, I think, if you're showing a keen interest and enthusiasm for journalism.
Do you desire to be, or would you like to be a freelancer, or are you happier in a situation where you are an employed photographer, you work for a big company, and obviously that brings with it a financial security, but do you sometimes wonder, oh, maybe I'd like to go freelance? Not
really. I enjoy where I am, not just because it's the stability, but because it's the team effort. You know, there's nothing better than being in a newsroom when it's so busy. And the thrill of that is exciting, and you want to be part of that story, you know. That's a big appeal, you know, that's fantastic. The feelings you get from doing that, being asked, if you've got this picture, can you send it over now? Have you got anything different? Or you phoned in saying, I've got this angle, I've seen this guy, I've done that person. Whatever it is, you know, just to be in the hub of it and producing the news when the newsroom is really, really buzzing, you know, it's so exciting.
Would you like to work for a big national?
It's a good question. I've been tempted many times, but I'm settled now. If you're a press story for a national paper, you're often jet-setting last minute. When you've got a young family, it's a hard thing to do. You know, there's a work-life balance there. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll get the opportunity one day. I don't know. I certainly had a look at it when I was younger. But yeah, it'd be an interesting challenge.
Yeah, and how do you see the world, the press world developing, and how do you see your role within that developing?
We're multi-skilled now, to the point that photographers definitely are on the front line quicker than anybody else usually. So to be able to relay what's in front of you to a news desk is really important, not just through pictures, but to be able to talk them through it and maybe get an interview with someone very quickly. Because social media and the internet is so quick at wanting to get news. You know, it's important.
It's insatiable almost, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's quite intense. Yes, as we're on the front line, I say front line, but as we're the first one usually react to the news story or get there quickest. You know, we're the eyes and the ears of the newsroom very quickly. You know, so they want pictures straight away, and then they want some copy or some words or some video. You know.
And what advice would you give to young students who are studying photojournalism in Cardiff University? What sort of advice would you give them?
you've got to want to do it. It's got to be something that's in your being to want to be a photographer and get into news, I think. And if that's the case, then go for it because you'll really enjoy it. You know, if you're inquisitive and you want to learn more and you want to do photography as a profession, I think it's still a good route, a good thing to be doing, because you can freelance and you still work for papers. I think the jobs are still there, the work's still there. It's just the role's been reinvented, a little bit, So if you're willing to not just be a photographer but to do video and to talk to people, you're probably onto a good thing.